So this lesson we are going to be looking at the ear, but we're going to be looking at more than just that, because we're also going to be looking at how the way you hold your pencil can really help any drawing, especially figurative drawing. And I just want to show you a couple of quick demos. Now, if I hold my pencil normally, so as if I'm about to write a letter, and I was to just pivot, so if I just draw a line naturally that my hand wants to do, you can see that that's very arched, it's not very straight. In order for me to get a straight line, I almost have to turn my hand and I push down on the pencil or up. But we don't often use a straight line in figurative drawing or portraiture, so by using the tools that our bodies already give us, we can easily make that arc. So I want you to just have a little practice now, just by either leaning on your wrist. So if I'm drawing at my easel and I'm standing, I can lean on this squishy part of my hand, and I can just use my wrist as a pivot. And you can see that there's a nice arc forming there. Or I can just lean on these two knuckles here. And again, I'm just creating these nice arcs there. Which, if you just look at this line, you can easily imagine that this is a gigantic ear. So, for example, if I'm just filling that out there, half the job is done just by the way that I'm using the natural curvature of my hand. So what we're going to do now is really look at an ear. The only way that your drawing will get better is by really observing what an ear entails. Often when we go to classes, you don't draw an ear front on. So you don't know the structure of it and what's inside. So for me at this stage, I can pretty much just draw an ear from my imagination. So let's look at this together. So obviously we have the earlobe, but then the earlobe turns into a fold, so the skin is pinched. And we have this nice curve that creates this dent inside the top of the ear. Inside we have these 3 dark shadows usually, because I don't know the technical word sadly, but this cartilage is just poking right back out. And this is how obviously we catch the sound. So once you get familiar with all these shapes, they become very, very easy to draw. And the key to this drawing is the shading, because as you can see, we've got some really, really dark values there in those 3. We've got some really light values here. And then the rest is kind of a mid value. So hopefully before long, we should be able to construct an ear with minimal effort. Grab your 2B pencil and let's begin. We'll start with that arcing motion that we just practiced to get the edges of our ear. And then if I just move my hand along, I could just continue that arc for as much as possible. So I'm also trying to recognize where it turns. So we've got more of a steeper line going down here into the lobe. Whereas here we've got a very sharp turn. Okay, so on the top, let's just bring that to a nice position. So as you can see, they're kind of in line with each other. When we work inside, think about that thickness of the top ridge. Okay, and then near the top it becomes wider. So actually let's think about where that shape starts to turn. Actually, let's bring this up a little bit. Just check that your negative space, so your space in here, is nice and big. It's going to look a bit thick for now, but the shading will definitely help with all of those bits. Okay, so those are the outlines that we need. It's pretty much all of them because the rest is just shading. So switch now to your 8B and let's throw in our darkest value straight away. So let's go into the top part of the ear. Just think about how dark does it go all the way through. So actually what we can see in here is a really nice cast shadow. So I can actually outline this shadow. Got a little bit too far there, but not to worry, I can push that back up. Okay, and then let's go underneath here. So remember, these lines aren't definite. They're always rehearsal lines, because you might find that when you're looking at it in more detail, things will often change, and they do change a lot in my drawings. Now this shadow softly comes into that drum section. There's a nice little bit of shading in there. Okay, and then as it crosses into this slightly higher level, it becomes softer and then darker. So here in mine I've noticed that the shape in this space isn't right, so I'm just going to rectify that. It's probably a little higher as well. And then all these edges are super, super soft. At this point, I think a 2B would be the better option just to blend that in. So just switch pencils and start softening those edges. Okay, and in this section, it's not white, but it is very light, so I'm just going to very, very lightly add that. And then again, I'm just going to try and soften the edges there. We can probably just come out of here gently. Okay, so let's go back up to this shadow. So we have a little highlight here. So even though it's not white, I just want to remember that it's there. And then let's bring this shadow down. Cool, so that's fine. So let's just add some grey in there. Obviously I should shade that in too. Okay, and then definitely push this a lot darker. Yeah, I've just gone over that, which is fine because I really want to push this shadow. I think I'm being a bit scared about it. Probably because all of you are watching me. No, okay. So let's come back to this shape. And I just want to bring those bits together. And then I want to start blending this shadow into this shape. So it's quite a light shape, so let's just gently add some grey, because we definitely don't want it to stay white. A bit of cross-hatching, so turn your pencil the other way. The same amount of pressure just to get it on there. Cool, and then we can probably add a bit of shading onto this ridge here. So notice it's darker on the left hand side. It's still not white on the right, so still want to add a bit of grey on there. Just trying to go in the direction of the ear roughly. And let's just try and join that up here. Okay, so up here we have a couple of dark sections, so let's try and get this little fella here. Blend, blend, blend. And then there is a shape that kind of comes from down here all the way into the top of the ear. So again, let's just add a little bit of grey around there because it's not white. Just situates it a bit nicer. So down here where we have the little fold from the face, there's a little bit of darkness there. And I can probably just darken this section in there. And then obviously we have not really touched this, so let's pop that in. So the shape of this shadow kind of just falls out like a water slide. Again, let's make sure that we have grey everywhere, so the water is falling into something. It's very cross-hatchy at the minute, but that's fine. Okay, it's coming together. This section is bothering me a bit, so I'm just going to mute that. But you can still see it, which is perfect. Now, let's start to work on these edges. So we actually can't see any outline in the ear, so we have to use our shading to blend that all together. Because the ear is obviously 3D, we have some form being created, and that's when the light is hitting the object and the light is falling away from it. So all along this edge we have bigger shadows, smaller shadows, but there's always a shadow on there. This one is quite a big one. And I just want to make sure I'm blending. It's hard to say a few times in a row. Blending. Okay, this could definitely be blended better. So I want us to experiment a little bit at this stage and bring in your 2H. Our 2H is a nice fine pencil, and as this is a very, well, the pitch is a very smooth ear, this is not at the minute, we need to get to that point. So what we're going to do with this 2H is just keep shading, don't add too much pressure. All we're doing is filling in those messy areas that we've created. Maybe you haven't, maybe it's just me. So if it is just me, you can watch me shade. So you can watch me fill in and just make that ear more palatable, or you can just continue with your drawing. But the smoothness is really going to help my drawing. Later on we will be refining it anyway. So for now this is just a bit of housekeeping, I suppose. Very satisfying. Just take your time, there's no rush. Drawing should never be rushed. So if you ever find that you're slightly more behind whatever stage I'm at, don't worry, because that is okay. This is your lesson, you go at your pace. Okay, this could definitely be blended better. Okay, hopefully you can see that, and I'm actually going to keep this pencil for a little bit and just work into these shadows, because we have some really defined lines in here, and it's just going to help to make it that little bit more realistic at this stage. So I'm really trying to even out those darker areas. So just take a couple of seconds now just to work into your shadows and just try and soften your pencil marks. So hopefully you can see the difference that it's making. I'm going to switch to my 2B now, because that pencil is just a little bit too light. Again, I'm just going to keep working at these shadows, to keep working at those shapes. I just recognize here that there's a bit of a shadow in this ridge, so I need to make sure I add that. If I ever get stuck and I'm looking at an area that pretty much looks the same, I'm like, well, it can't all be the same grey, because it's well, it's an ear, you know, it's curved, it's moving all the time. So I just have a little squint at the image, and it helps me just to see the values a bit better. I can see what's really light and what's really dark, what's slightly darker It's just those tiny details that really help to push your drawing. Okay, so my drawing just wants those dark bits to be pushed now. So if it wasn't dark enough already, just take this opportunity to really get the darkness in. Add some pressure if your pencil needs it. Mine does. I'm onto my 8B again, so I'm really pushing those dark values. I'm really trying to get in those areas so that I can push the contrast on my drawing. So I'm starting to see how light I've actually kept a lot of this ear and how much more I can push it. Just give it that better idea of depth. Okay, I've just switched back to my 2B pencil. Really want to start to get these smaller shadows blended nicely into the lighter bits. So what I want you to do now is just focus on these edges. So for example, this area of my ear is quite flat. So let's think about, okay, I'm going to squint and just see where the lightest area is. And it's very, very subtle. But we have a slightly darker area here on the edge. Then inside is just marginally darker. I want you to really observe every area on the picture and just think about, okay, where can I push it a little bit more? Where can I even it out? Is it soft enough? Remember, this ear is very, very soft. So we want to try and replicate that in our drawing. Switch between your 2B and your 2H just to get it as soft as possible. And then your 8B to make it as dark as possible. Just going to extend around the ear a little bit. I think that should help to place the ear on a head. So underneath the lobe, obviously we have a lovely shadow there. I'm just going to refine everything with my 2H now. So I like to spend a lot of time on this bit. I think it just shows the end of the drawing. And then hopefully it'll show me if I need to push anything any darker or refine any shapes, but I'm pretty sure my shapes are in good condition right now. But if you have any shapes that need a little bit of work, then don't feel like you can't change it at this stage. At this point, I'm just trying to fill in all those little gaps. So earlier we were just kind of going everywhere. Now we're being a bit more controlled. Make sure your pencil is sharp, because otherwise you won't be able to get in those final little gaps that we want to. So I'm just going to give you a bit of time now to refine your drawing. Make sure you're taking the time to soften those edges, push those dark areas even darker, and keep the light areas light and appropriate to the value that it is. So I'll give you 5 to 10 minutes, we'll play some music.